According to the Department of Labor, approximately 132 million people are designated as full-time employees. This is a large population. But in addition to that, what's missing from the statistics are those who have been classified as part-time employees, which is a growing population. Some of the employers cite the fact of increasing healthcare costs are keeping a large part of their workforce at part-time status. This increases the intensity of overwhelm for these employees who are working limited hours, but are expecting to produce, well, close to part-time output or productivity. This is what is causing a great deal of overwhelm, is that employees are asked to do more than what is humanly possible in some cases. Think of your work, your primary areas of responsibility, those things that you are fundamentally accountable for, as items on a plate. And you're in a buffet, and the plate can only hold so much food, just as our jobs can only hold so much activity, with resources sometimes being, well, difficult to access, with computer or internet downtime, or other things that impact our ability to get our job done. This is huge, because when we have issues in getting permission, chain of command, how many approvals do I need to be able to get something done around here? It's a big question for a lot of us. And all of these things feed into this increased pressure in the workplace that is causing nearly 40 million Americans a feeling of overwhelm, a feeling of stress. And ultimately, we know that leads to burnout. As a matter of fact, burnout rates are at an all-time high. Then comes in these elements of technology like AI, where people are having to relearn their job or relearn an entirely new job in order to be able to do the work that they do. Their role is changing, but the speed in which technology is hitting us is far faster than the human ability to learn how to, for example, let's say I was in the marketing industry and I was doing marketing ads, developing marketing ads, and now AI can do that for them. But now they have to discover the prompts to use to be able to get the result that they are looking for. And this is just an example. AI is having an impact across many different industries, displacing employees and forcing the good employees, the employees we're keeping, to learn more and new and different things. This all creates a cocktail for heightened overwhelm and stress. And ultimately, if we're not careful, burnout. This is why mental health specifically should be something that is offered by every business in some way, shape, or form. Many companies have EAPs, employee assistant programs, which allow employees to seek counseling, sometimes without any expense, and the organization that provides the EAP to that employee has no knowledge of whether it's being utilized, or they know it's being utilized, but they don't know who is utilizing it and for what purposes. And that's for privacy reasons. So are you one of those people that are starting to feel overwhelmed with the amount of work that comes to your desk on a daily basis? Look, whether you're working in the office or at home, overwhelm happens simply because of the massive amounts of tasks and activities that we have to complete every day. And when that expectation of what is to be completed exceeds the amount of time available on the clock, and it's not that we're lazy, it's simply because there are so many different distractions or barriers to us being able to get the work done that makes it so frustrating. And it's that frustration that stokes the fire of overwhelm. Look, I made the mistake as a supervisor many years ago. I had a few employees that were my high performers. So what did I do? Well, I delegated to them. If I wanted something done right, but I couldn't do it myself, I gave it to them. Until finally one of them came into the office and said, look, I can't take on any more work. And the individual looked very stressed. So we sat down and we talked about what would be doable for them so that I could transfer some things off of their plate. Look, we have a great mechanism for putting things on people's plates more and more. But do we have a good mechanism for removing things or being able to identify those things that are higher priority versus the lower priority? When we can sift through the high priority things, we can automatically start to clean the plate of those valued employees who work hard for us. We don't want to lose them over the stress of overwhelm. That is incredibly debilitating for both the employee and for the employer. So we have to make sure that we are mindful as we take a look at the workload of each employee and what is a reasonable request of how much work can be done in what period of time. I don't know that we've done a very good job of making a work analysis to look at plate loads and say, when do we need to take some things off? And remember, in some of these cases, that may mean hiring new employees, which many organizations are not thrilled about the idea of hiring more employees simply because of the costs associated with the hiring and with, benefits and what we call loaded in the area of human resources. The cost is very expensive, and we know that there's a ramp up time, right? We bring people in, we got to get them acclimated to the culture, we've got to get them acclimated to the job, and there's a period of time before performance begins to ramp up. Now, take that into consideration when I say, with all these changes that are coming in through technology, AI being, the top of the heap, but not the only one, that learning curve becomes extended. And so we're struggling. We're struggling as individuals, we're struggling as organizations to get a grip on our workloads and become truly, truly productive. However, with that in mind, I have a few pieces of advice to follow to help combat overwhelm, stress, and anxiety at work. And this is an active conversation between the employee and the employer. It's very important that we have a collaborative approach to resolving these issues before they get way too out of control. So let's take a look at those ideas. Okay, so humor me for a second. Let's start at the beginning of this process. You go in for an interview with a company. They should be providing you with a job description, and that job description should be comprehensive and understandable. It should be put in simple language so that you fully know and understand the tasks and activities you'll be required to perform. From an employee standpoint, please, fake it till you make it just doesn't work here. Look, if it requires project management, then gather the project management skills. Take a course on project management. Find out what skills are necessary for the jobs that you're looking for, and make sure that you have the skills up front, and don't assume that you're going to get on-the-job training unless it's specifically noted in the job description. Feel free to ask questions during this time. Anything that doesn't seem clear to you, make them spell it out. I can't tell you how many times I've been into interview meetings where the HR person was asked a question about the job description, and their response was, I don't know. Come on, people. If you're an organization hiring somebody, the person interviewing them should be close to that position, the manager preferably, and an HR person, so that all the questions of a candidate can be answered. And now, as a prospective employee, you should be asking those questions. So gain clarity on the workload expectations. How many hours a week will you be working? And what are the activities that you'll be involved in? Beware of companies that say we work in a fast-paced environment. This insinuates that they expect you to hit the ground running. But every organization is different. If I was a planner in one organization, that job and the resources and the software I may be using can be completely different in another. So fast-paced, ask, how much time are you going to allow me to ramp up my skills so that I can be fast-paced? And it's important for employers to quantify their expectations. How much time should be spent on what type of project, whatever it might be? And what exactly does it mean and anything else my manager asks me to do? Look, if you look at the tasks, activities, or areas of responsibility involved in the job description, ask yourself, is there really any room for me to do whatever else my manager asks me? And don't be afraid to ask for clarification there. What specifically do you mean? What will the manager be asking me? And what might be what the manager will be asking me to do? So clarity on scope of work is very important for both you and the employer. Make sure that you're familiar with and you fully understand what you're getting yourself into. This lack of this, I should say, can cause overwhelm. If you're not prepared and you go into a new job and there's more work than there is time, you're going to struggle. And that struggle is not a pleasant experience. Make sure that you have access to all the necessary resources that you need in order to be able to do the job. And yes, you can ask, what resources do you have available to me that I can use to be able to complete the work that you're asking? And employers, there should be rules and guidelines when it comes to delegating to employees. We need to make sure that they have a proficiency in what you're delegating them to, and that you're not overworking and overtaxing a high-performing employee. That's counterproductive for both of you. Make sure that once on the job, you identify clearly the priorities. What is the most important duty that you need to perform? And then what are the lesser ones? This allows you to be able to focus in on those critical few instead of getting overwhelmed by the trivial many. So be in constant conversation with your supervisor or manager and ask, what are the top priorities? What can I do for you that's most important right now? Remember, as an employee, you're doing the work that will allow your supervisor or manager to achieve their goals. So along with those priorities, I would also ask you, what is the timeline on those? What are my deadlines, drop dead dates, whatever it might be? Let me know how many by when. That way, at least you know that you're either meeting or missing the mark. And if that meeting the mark is causing overwhelm, then there needs to be an assessment on that plate load. Or another option is that you could be asking your teammates or colleagues, how do they do things? Establish a team best practices so that everyone has access to the same tools, technology, and sequence of events in getting that job done. And once on the job, it's important for you to take responsibility for your own self-care. What does this mean? Well, it means making sure that you take your breaks and your lunch. Now, in many states, taking your lunch is mandatory. It's illegal not to. And in other states, it may be illegal not to take your break too. Now, I know that the workload is demanding sometimes, but for your own peace of mind, you need to take your breaks and your lunch. Take this time to enjoy your meal at lunchtime in a relaxed environment And on your breaks, do what you need to do to be able to get back into the work. Look, there are techniques like getting into flow or using the Pomodoro method, and I've got videos for that up there, to be able to become more productive. Flow, by the way, increased my productivity by at least 3 times. So it's something to look into. Next, which is really important, the relationship between you and your supervisor and manager is critical. You should have an environment where you can be open and honest about the workload, the tasks, and deadlines. Some may be negotiable. You need to find that out, but you can only find that out by having a conversation with them. Some may be hard deadlines, so you may have to put more resources to getting those things done. But the important thing is that you should be open and honest about the challenges as they're coming on, or if you can see them ahead of time and saying, if you want project A and project B done by these dates, I'm going to need help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Now, look, there are other things like practicing mindfulness, breathing techniques. These are all very effective at lowering your stress levels. They've been proven. But first, we needed to tackle those big things up front to make sure that you have a good relationship with your leadership so that you can do the best for them. Now, if you have any questions or any comments that you want to make, please put them down below. I answer all of them. And both employers and employees often leave me questions about the content of these videos. I'm happy to help. Look, if we overwhelm an employee to the point where they become stressed and it requires time off, there's an attendance issue. You have to be very careful because oftentimes these environments can create a hostile work environment or an environment in which a lawsuit can arise. So it's very important to make sure that your employees are working healthily as well as productively. It'll save you a lot of headaches in the long run. And employees, make sure that you commit to things that you know you can do and not commit to things that you have no knowledge of. That can get you in a great deal of trouble in a very short period of time. These are my basic tips for covering the feeling of overwhelm that leads to stress and ultimately burnout. And unfortunately, some of our best employees are the ones who burn out first because they're the first ones we look to delegate more work to. So managing that plate load is very, very important. Keep an eye on it. Make sure that everyone is productive and happy.